I got you.
Just a
Um,
brief biopsy of your history.
I'm Vernon Jones, State Representative for Georgia, from DeKalb County and Rockdale County. My past experience has gone from the private sector, working for Bell South, MCI, all the way to being elected to the legislature and being elected Chief Executive Officer for DeKalb County, where I've had to manage 46 different agencies, about 8,000 employees, and provide services for about 800,000 people, citizens. I am back in the legislature now after my stint there, and also have a private company, the Henry Oliver Group. My experience in the legislature in terms of public policy really steered me towards what can we do as state legislators to improve the quality of life of Georgians. And a lot of that is through economic development, quality education, proper transportation, creation of jobs. Those things are important. Those are things that create neighborhoods where people can work, send their kids to college, pay their mortgage, at the same time be able to save money, to invest in stocks or whatever they want to invest in. That's the American dream. When I look at some of the areas that we have been talking about, there were areas that were thriving areas, let's say back in the 60s and the 70s, and now you see those areas that have become blighted. What has caused that? What has created that disconnect to where it went from a thriving area to an area that had been infected with drugs, crime, unemployment, schools are not performing schools. There's something happened there. What happened? And there are different factors here. And this is not the place to blame. It is just to say, okay, here's some of the things that created this, and then let's talk about some of the potential solutions. Obviously, when the economy takes a dive and people lose their jobs, many times people lose their homes. Many times people can't get jobs. Some of them, sadly to say, out of survival, maybe sometimes they commit crimes because, they may be purchasing items that were stolen, or they may go to retail stores and steal stuff or whatever. And then all of a sudden you see robbery crimes, people looking to get money. Then the drugs come in, and people sometimes, again, realize that I can't get a job because there's no employment now. And that's for different reasons. It can be based sometimes on lack of education, it can be based on sometimes the lack of diversity. But the fact of it is, you start to see people out of just a natural instinct to survive. Some of them go into public assistance, where that end up being almost generational because that's all they know. But it started somewhere, and if they're not given opportunities, then that's all they know. Sometimes that gets transferred to the next generation. You see teen pregnancy, where they're in school, they don't have jobs, but how do they take care of their children? Healthcare wise, in other ways. Well, again, seeking government assistance. So you start to see a weight on tax dollars, and government can't be all for everybody. That's why when you see drugs coming in too, you see young people get brought into that fast life. Well, I can go and sell drugs, and I can buy this kind of car and these kind of clothing and sneakers, etc., etc. And then that adds to the problem. So all of a sudden, that thriving community has turned into a crack community with the introduction of crack. It turns into a crime-ridden community. It turns into an unsafe community for seniors. Gun violence, all those things start to happen. Innocent children being killed. It becomes an area that is just of despair. Now, how do we change that? And we can look at some areas in the metropolitan Atlanta area, neighborhoods that have been affected by those types of injections. So when you start to look at trying to revitalize that neighborhood, what do? Well, obviously, job creation is important. But not only just job creation, job training. Job training in the sense that maybe every child does not want to go to college, but maybe they're looking for a trade skill, whether welding, or it could be AC, heating and repair. There are those types of jobs that they can be trained for and get into the private sector to earn a living. When we find out when men and women have jobs, you really see crime go down because a lot of people want to work. Then if you see where law enforcement has a good relationship, build that good relationship in the community, you can start to address a lot of the crime. And the police is not looked upon as an enemy, but as a friend. And where people are coming forth and telling when someone commits a horrible crime. So the police, public safety makes a difference, but services in that area. Do they have good streets? There's sidewalks. Is the government doing its part? But at the same time, what about those people who, again, when they lost their homes and they're renting homes, you have these slumlords who are not maintaining their properties. You start to see issues with code enforcement because the neighborhood is down. So government has to get involved in terms of code enforcement, in terms of going after those slumlords, the police getting involved in terms of going after crime, the private sector, and somewhat the government gets involved in terms of creating job skills and creating jobs. But then the school systems, make sure these kids are job ready, that they get a quality education, because many times they're in these failing schools. That's why a lot of parents have literally broken the law to enroll their kids in a quality school by lying about their residence. But it's only because they want their child to have a quality education. So we can, on one hand, allow illegals to come to this country illegally and not charge them with a crime and not even send them back. But we have U.S. citizens, we have U.S. children here who are in failing schools, and when their mothers go to lie in order to get their child a quality education and enroll them in a school across town and lie about their address, that American citizen is charged and convicted. There's something wrong with that. But it's all in the name of quality education. So we have to address the education system. And I don't think always throwing money at it is the dominant factor. I think parents have to really get engaged and be involved in schools with their children. I think teachers pay. Teachers pay in many cases, or supplementary pay when you look at the household between them and their spouses. So attracting quality teachers, giving them quality pay, changing the education system, changing kids' minds and dreams and hopes on what they can be. All this starts to change a neighborhood. Developers coming in. What are developers doing? Are they constantly building apartments and they're just creating more and more slum areas? Or are you seeing where developers are coming in thinking long-term about the community, and they see an area that's maybe in a good proximity to downtown Atlanta? We use some of the areas that we know about. And all of a sudden it becomes target for gentrification, where now developers are coming in, building these homes way out of price. You're seeing an influx of middle class coming in these neighborhoods, and literally those who live in there either losing their homes due to they can't pay the taxes because the taxes are increasing because the values are going up over there. At the same time, those who live there, if they wanted to buy a house, they can't buy a house, they can't afford it. And then their children sometimes are selling those homes because their parents have passed. And you see, again, developers coming in and taking that house that was a blighted house, tearing it down, and building a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 house, and they're attracting, again, middle-income people. So that neighborhood starts to change. It changes for the good in many ways because you start to see the crime go away. You start to see police be more involved. You start to see the infrastructure more maintained. But what has it done to those people who've been living there? Now they get pushed out. And really, they don't always get pushed out every time because, again, some of those families, because they're offered by these developers and others, oh, we'll give you $200,000 or $100,000 for this house. And they're thinking, wait a minute, $100,000, that's a lot of money. They end up selling their homes knowing that they can't come back a year later buying that neighborhood, so that neighborhood is gone. So gentrification is another issue. You look around the stadium, you look at Fourth Ward, what has changed over there. We have to create a balancing act. How do we see neighborhoods change for the good, because they have been blighted? They do need to be cleaned up. The streets need to be cleaned up. The drug dealers need to be pushed out. Or at least if they're going to sell drugs, they can go to Venus and Mars and sell drugs, but not in those neighborhoods. It's creating more of this poverty and more of this crime. But at the same time, it's not always their fault. So how are these drugs coming in? These drugs are coming in from Mexico and other places under the disguise of, oh, we're fleeing our country, we're looking to come to America, and the gangs are coming in, and the drug dealers are sending young people in to keep their drug operation going. So you can't sell drugs if there are no drugs available. I don't care who you are. So that's a whole nother issue. But the fact of it is, when you see gentrification come in, and you see developers who are not wanting to build a community that has some affordable home. And what I mean by affordable home is not always someone who's on public assistance, but working class people, those people who work in the hotel industry, those who work in those jobs that are not high paying jobs, but they're working every day. They are servers. They're working in restaurants. They're administrators at various companies, but they would like to live in neighborhoods like that too. So that's why the government has to step in. When the government is creating these zonings, rezonings for these developers so they can go and build these different types of developments, that they are required to put in a certain amount of what we call affordable home. If you're going to do a 200-unit apartment building, 20% of those should be set aside for those, again, who work in the service industry. They don't want to have to go way out into the suburbs to literally find a place that's affordable, and they have to drive downtown or try to catch transportation downtown, when many of them don't have MARTA going out in deep suburbs. They would like to live in town too, and they should be able to live in town. So we have to create that balance on how the government can work with the private sector, not over heavily handed, but still, if you want to zone for these 200 units, we're going to set aside 20%. So folks who are from the service industry and those who don't have as much or have an income can afford to live in that development. Developers who get it, they do it. Those who don't, they'll just go and just say, okay, we'll go somewhere else, and then that area is left undeveloped. I think we're seeing something unique over in the West Side area, because West Side is coming up now over by the stadium. You have like Pulte Foundation, Pulte Home Foundation, you have Chick-fil-A Foundation, you have Arthur Blank Foundation, the West Side Development. They have a unique idea where they're literally going now and they're buying some of those blighted properties and vacant lots with the idea of building something new in its place or renovating some of those that are existing, and to keep some of those folks from being pushed out of those neighborhoods, if you will, that those who can't afford a home, those who can with moderate incomes, they can work with them on, let's say, the Georgia Dream Act, where based on your salary, if your annual income, I think it's under somewhere around 50 or less, that they will help you with down payment assistance and low interest. But at the same time, those who can't afford a home right now, they can rent, though, from these nonprofit groups, West Side Development Nonprofit, for example, where they can rent, and their landlord is not some slumlord just trying to get whatever he can get and doesn't care about the neighborhood, but they're there to more manage to make sure that, first of all, if you are going to be living in these facilities, in these homes, we want you there, we want you to be safe, but there are certain things, there are restrictions. I mean, you can't have someone selling drugs out of one of these homes that release them to you. So, but I'm glad to see that they are playing a role in this, and they're playing a big role in this. Because I think now, if you look in the inner city, that West Side is the last area that has not gone to full gentrification, where the average family can't live there anymore. And so I think they're on the right track, and I hope that you want to cut, I can pick it back up.
Oh, okay. I'm just going to close you in.
Okay. And I was just, go ahead.
This is real good, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. What, 200? Okay. All right then. Okay, I get it then. Okay, sounds good. All right.
Yeah, especially I'm just cutting this right quick. Especially your position on immigration,
Yeah.
you done hit the nail on the head with that one. See, I'm out here. You know what I'm saying? Working class. I know exactly what's going on with how they come over here, and I hate to say it, they be getting the jobs, and when they be getting in the jobs, suppose you knew, and you supposed to get trained by that dude, he ain't gonna train you like he's supposed to because he don't want you to get that skill.
Right.
And they just, but when one of they people come on the job, oh man, they just, they, they get trained right up and they can't even speak English.
Yeah.
And now you just sitting looking at this like, man, you know what I'm saying? My dad fought in Vietnam. My granddad fought in World War II in Korea. My whole family marched with Dr. Martin Luther King down in Albany, Georgia. So, this is going through my mind, like at one time.
Generational roots here.
Generational roots.
Just come over and let me. I would go back on camera. You go back on camera.
I have you the whole time.
Oh, okay.
If you want.
And so we'll call this a topic on immigration. Let's talk about immigration. First of all, we're a country of immigrants, and I think America had always had its arms open to those who want to come here legally. And to achieve the American dream, and I'm okay with it. We all agree with that. I think sometimes there's a confusion. Sometimes I've heard some of the liberals say that, well, they compare illegal immigrants coming from Mexico, El Salvador, or some of those other Central American countries to slavery. Slaves coming over here. What's a big difference? Slaves were forced to come over here, and they were forced to do free labor. Those who are coming over this country now from those areas and others, they're coming on their own accord. They're not brought over here forcefully, and then when they get here, they're not treated or they're not required to do free labor. It's a big difference there. Now, I am all for people coming to this country. I just think we are a country of laws. And if you come over here illegally, there should be consequences. If you break the law and you in a car with your children and you break the law, they will take you to jail immediately and separate you from your family immediately because you broke the law. So that's the argument. How can others illegally come to this country who are not a U.S. citizen? They're breaking the law coming in, but now it's like we're finding housing for you, we're finding schooling for you, medical resources, etc., etc. And again, you can go right over to Vine City and you can see homeless Americans with generations of their family here. What about resources? Some of the same resources could be going to them, or now being forced to give to people who never spent a full week in this country, if you will. But again, I'm for immigration, and I think the immigration process is broken in terms of how long it takes to get status, but still, that gives nobody a reason to break in. And then when they come in and they bring in their young children that are illegal, and they're under the radar screen, all of a sudden that kid grows up, and the kid says, all I know is America. That's true. And I shouldn't go back because my parents brought me over here. Well, your parents knew that they would bring you over illegally, jeopardizing you, that one day if you got caught, that you may have to be returned home. And it goes back to what I said, if you kind of go back a little further, when slaves were free, they outpopulated many whites in this country, primarily in the southern areas. And after Abraham Lincoln, through executive order initially, then through Congress, freed the slaves, well, he was killed. Here comes Andrew Johnson. They come in and add another amendment because the African American vote at that time, and they were filling up a lot of the legislation, including holding most of the positions down in South Carolina. And then they said, well, wait a minute, we're going to pass another amendment to say that you had to have been born on U.S. soil in order to be a U.S. citizen. So all those Africans that came over, that were brought to this country, even as kids, all of a sudden they lost their voting rights. No matter how long they've been over, they couldn't vote, they couldn't have the same rights as anybody else. And so that reduced the number of political influence because all of a sudden, if you weren't born on the U.S. soil, you couldn't say that you were not a U.S. citizen, you were not entitled to different things. Now, what you see happening with coming across the border from South and Central America, many people know that all we have to do is cross the border, have that child is an immediate U.S. citizen, and becomes an anchor baby because you can't deport their parents, or it's so politically in some minds so horrible to deport their parents because the child was born, and so the child is a U.S. citizen, but the parents aren't. So that is being abused in many ways by a lot of people who've come here. They know once they can come and cross the border and have a child. Imagine you were 9 months or 8 months, 29 days, 11 hours, 59 minutes on the other border. You come across, in 1 minute you have that child's automatically a U.S. citizen, literally. Now, that's the law, so the child's a citizen, but you can see how some abuse that in many ways. And so it was intended originally to take away black voting power, political power, when they changed the law, the Constitution, and made it you had to have been born on U.S. soil. But now you're seeing it coming back. But I can tell you, if we were to change our Constitution, that even if you are born on U.S. soil, if your parents came over illegally, you're not automatically a U.S. citizen. I think that would change a lot of that. Now, that is creating some of the frustration where when illegals come over and they start to get all these benefits, and then they're getting jobs that U.S. citizens would normally want or like to have, but they're being undercut because if they're willing to do a cheaper labor, you can never get the average hourly wage up, because if the job is paying $5 an hour now and they're illegals are coming over, they were willing to do it for $3. Well, you can't even survive off 3. You can't even survive off 5, but that undercuts wages going up too. So you even see illegals that come here don't want a lot of illegals to come over because they're doing good, and when these new ones come over, they're undercutting them. So, and and I am very, very pro immigration. I'm very, very pro family, pro children, etc., etc. But we have to have some ground rules. And so illegal immigration is a unique issue where it's creating some resentment in many regards by U.S. citizens. And so until we address that, and I blame that on Congress, I completely blame that on Congress because they have the ability to change it. And it's just creating more and more. This pot is getting hotter and hotter, and the top is going to blow off if we don't address this in the future.
You're absolutely right, man. You're absolutely right. You said it, because I'm gonna be honest with you. I had a problem personally. I'm not gonna get too much involved with, and it's exactly that. But I remember back in the day, even in the Bluff. Let's say this is 93, 94. You would always see the developers coming through, the white boys with the big F-150 trucks, and they pick up and they see people on the corner, and they be like, "You want to make $100 today?"
Yeah.
You know, and you see them, these dope boys, some of them, they jump in the back of the truck and they ride off. The same dudes, and then you didn't see the guy 2 weeks later, the same guy. You might have seen he got picked up every morning. You didn't see him no more. You see him 2-3 weeks later, a couple of months later, he got a work belt on. He's covered in, drywall spray and paint. Yeah. What you been doing? Hey, I'm working over here now. Yeah. I'm getting this much money. And this is back then they were paying that kind of money. Yeah. So maybe, just for that same unskilled labor. But again, as far as OTJ, on-the-job training, I think that's so important, because that's what we're hoping to achieve, some kind of focus